I love talking to folks that don't know the art world or what art is supposed to do. Those are some of the greatest conversations because for me, art is supposed to connect people. I hope my art connects me to something new and different. If that's all it does, I think that's enough.
You're listening to Notes from Chicago with Ashley Phillips. I am so excited today because I am talking to one of my friends and an amazing and accomplished artist, Caroline Kent. Hello, Caroline.
Hi, Ashley. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this and participate in my little side project.
No, I think
my art project.
it's
My art
wonderful.
project.
It's great. I mean, I was thinking about it like, we are friends and you know what I do, but this is actually an opportunity to sit down and talk more in depth that we don't always get to do.
Yes.
And so thank you for this opportunity to not only be on the show, but to share with you more intimately on what I do, what I've done. So thank you.
Of course. I think one of the things that inspired me to have you on here was the conversations that you and your husband Nate have had with my dad, who is coming from a perspective, for people listening, my dad lives in Arkansas, is not super familiar and like deeply embedded in art, but has come to visit me in Chicago and has talked with Caroline and Nate and just had so many, just sort of like a natural curiosity about art and the art world and the business of art and kind of how that operates. I've seen your work in galleries. You had one or two, I think two sort of displays within the window of MoMA in New York, which was very cool to see when I was there on a trip. And but one of the places that some of your work is being shown right now in Chicago is in Union Station. I'm super interested to hear how that came about and how that might, if it did, I think that's a question too. If the process for creating that work was different than what you might have in a gallery or what you might have at the MoMA or, in the collection of the Art Institute.
I want to get the name of that program right. They reached out to me. I think it's Art and Amtrak. And it was a project where they chose 3 artists to come and create these public commissions. The project is unique because it's not the way I typically work. And it's not canvas, it's not singular, it was multi-paneled. I mean, everything about it was very different way of me working. It even ended up in vinyl. And so it's semi-transparent, so you can kind of see through it. So I know from my own history that when I take on a new project, it's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be a learning curve, but I feel that the gains are so much outweigh the unknowns. And it was really a great project because one, I did want to kind of show up in the city of Chicago in a unique kind of way. It was a great opportunity to do something in Union Station. Now, Union Station is iconic too because I grew up watching so many movies that referenced it, Adventures in Babysitting. It's like, it's so great because they like have a scene where, it's all about Union Station. So that for me felt really special. And so working and designing it was also another way of working. I designed some of it analog where I'm cutting out shapes and assembling them in my studio with paper, colored paper. And then I'm putting them into a computer program and kind of designing each panel that way. And then it goes up. And once a project goes up, that's another learning curve that nobody necessarily talks about publicly because as artists, there's this presumption maybe that we do a thing and it's considered tied up neatly in a bow. But I'm always learning. I'm always critiquing, thinking, okay, next time I'll do this differently, or I can do this or that. So these opportunities are really helpful because they do stretch me. There are ways I work where I'm like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I'm uncertain, but I'm excited to practice in public and I'm not afraid necessarily to fail. I think those are key things I don't, and I think my definition of failure over the years has totally changed. So as artists, we take risks and we try new things, and we're not necessarily promising perfection, and we're not promising that everyone's going to like it. We're just being able to be given, we're given the platform to be free. And so it was really exciting, getting the chance to do that and see it come alive in a space that was a little bit, dismal, or it needed some life in there. People are
Yeah.
waiting for the train, and people are passing through hallways, and there's waiting areas, and I think it did need something in there, and I'm really glad that I was able to kind of contribute to hopefully somebody traveling a little bit better.
Were you happy with the end result?
I was happy with it, but I learned, like, okay, if I do this again, I'm going to do A, B, and C. I'm going to do some other things. I'll change some things about it. Is it totally everything I wanted? Maybe not, but I would tweak a few things. And that's the critical side of art making, is that I don't necessarily want to give myself a pass or say, "Oh yeah, I just really like everything I do." I think I do a thing and then I'm hoping that I get better and I can do different things next time. So, but I'm happy. I'm happy because I received some really interesting random messages from people that had seen it that I hadn't spoken to in years, that reached out and
Oh,
said, "I just happened to be traveling through. I saw your name. I saw the mural." Like, whoa. And that for me becomes even more important and exciting, that people can see it and they remember me, or I connect with people I haven't talked to in years. And
yeah.
I don't know, as an artist, there is something I desire. This goes back to being from a small town, is that I want to show up in unexpected places. And this is also why I think Nate and I both enjoyed speaking with your father. I love talking to folks that don't know the art world or what art is supposed to do, maybe. Those are some of the greatest conversations, because for me, art is supposed to connect people. At least I feel that way. Like, I hope
Yeah.
my art connects me to something new and different. So if that's all it does, I think that's enough.
I love that. I love that, Caroline, so much. So, why don't we zoom out a little bit and tell me, you know, um, kind of about your upbringing and how you became, kind of your journey of becoming an artist.
Yeah, thank you. That's always a good starting point. I think I'm so curious when I hear people's biographies and think about their journey and how it shaped their desires to do what they do. So I've often thought about this, that growing up in rural Illinois, Sterling, Illinois, I believe its population when I was growing up was around 14,000 people. And it had a lot of cornfields, and it was flat. Okay, so it was very flat, and it's funny because I was just thinking about this with another artist. They were remarking on, when you drive across Illinois in areas, you have telephone poles, you have fields of beans and corn, and
Hmm.
there's lines, and it's not a grid like Chicago. It's lines I'm thinking about. I'm thinking of like demarcating where one field might end and another one might start. So growing up in that rural area, I feel like the space gave me a lot of creative freedom. And a lot of that came from the perspective of being in the backseat of a car with my family, traveling from my small town to other parts of Illinois. My grandparents lived in Rockville, Illinois. So when you are driving and you have this vast landscape that is very flat and open, I think it really provided kind of the space to start dreaming. And it sounds maybe romantic in saying that, but I think it's very childlike to kind of have the space and also the landscape that evokes a kind of way that it sparks your imagination. And so that's how I think about my upbringing. Um, I don't think that many people saw me becoming an artist as well as me.
Yeah.
I had creative ideas, but they didn't land for a long time. And but I did have a lot of energy as a kid. And as you know, as a mother, you see your kids, be rambunctious and wild and hyperactive, and you're like, oh my goodness, what a handful. Well, I had a ton of energy as a kid. And I feel that that translated in a couple different directions, actually. So, and one of those was art. I think art
Yeah.
gave me the desire to, and the energy. I had the energy to kind of pursue a career that has so many unknowns. It has lots of question marks. There's no guarantees.
Yeah.
You really have to follow your passion or your desire fully and not um, be too swayed by future outcomes, because it's not necessarily a future you go into thinking, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's guaranteed success and what that success might look like. It's not none of that. So I couldn't foresee that at a young age, but I did have a desire.
When did you start to pursue it as a profession, or when maybe when did it start to come into focus for you that like, oh, this is something I can do, or this is something I have to do with my life?
I feel like I was a late bloomer in terms of art. It wasn't until undergrad. I would say that before I had talent, um, I had curiosity and creativity, but I didn't have a skill per se. I wasn't like really good at drawing growing up, but I did like to make things. And I would say things kind of came to a head when I was in undergrad and I visited the art gallery there. And I think that was my first exposure to an art gallery. I had visited a museum, but an art gallery felt I was just way more in tune and awake as a young person. And when I walked into the gallery on campus at Illinois State, I recall thinking, I don't know what this thing art is, but I want to know it. I think that's the language I would like to move in. I would like to
Mm-hmm.
speak. I would like to make. So it was really right around when I was age 19 or 20.
That's amazing. Do you remember what was displayed in the gallery that you responded to so much?
There were artworks that engaged collage, which is what turned me around to go and start making a lot of collage in my dorm room. I mean, it was the 90s and it was kind of the alternative scene was really attractive to me at the time. This kind of freedom of expression in freedom of expression. But I would come home and I think I covered every book I had in collage. And so there was a way that I took what I saw in the gallery space and brought it into my everyday life. And then I took the next step by actually taking an art class. And I think I ended up taking all art classes the next semester. And that opened me up even deeper.
Amazing. So do you still have any of the collages that you created in college?
I do have some early works. I do.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day when thrift stores were so popularized. I'd go to thrift stores and I remember collecting cigar boxes, old cigar boxes. And I remember trying to keep a sketchbook loose leaf, like loose. I didn't want it bound in
Mhm.
a book. So I would make
Yeah.
sketches and drawings and keep them in a cigar box. I thought that was so cutting edge.
That's so 90s.
So 90s. And that was kind of the way, yeah. And when I look back at them, they're figurative, their faces, they're responding to things happening in the world, not necessarily global events, maybe my world.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, looking at those early things, they look nothing like the work I make today. But I kind of think all artists need to kind of work through certain ways of responding to the world, and then you
Yeah.
later find your language.
That was going to be my next question, which is can you see the evolution, or is there similarity between what you initially started making up until
Well,
till now?
this is a funny question because I'm giggling to myself because I just recently visited Minneapolis, Minnesota, where my twin sister lives. And when I walk in her house, I see all these old artworks I made. They're everywhere. They're all over her house. And it's really funny to me because I don't work like that at all anymore. And it has its own style, it seems resolved, and it's really funny to me. I kind of giggle when I see that work because I couldn't see past that moment to this moment that I'm in now. And that happened when I recall I decided to go to grad school in Minnesota, and I recall a trip to the Weizmann Art Museum on campus.
Hmm.
And I think that's when I really saw in front of me, not in a book, not a printed image of, but an abstract painting that was really large scale. And I could sit in front of it. And it was Robert Motherwell. And that painter really captivated me. And I recall having this moment of thinking, how am I able to feel this way when I know this is just paint smeared around on a canvas? It shouldn't move me. I mean, how can these elements move me? How does it? Did he know this would happen? Did he know he'd be affecting someone in the future? And I just really kind of opened up all these questions I had about what art, the capacity, or what can art do? And I felt like I was so moved. I thought, I'm fascinated. I wonder if I can do something that moves someone else. Like, I wonder if what might move me could move someone else. So that's kind of where I started this journey into abstraction. So that was the big shift, seeing another painter work in abstraction.
When you're creating, um, do you think about, are you thinking about like, this is what is inspiring to me and I hope it inspires other people or affects other people or evokes a reaction in other people? Or are you, I guess, like, how do you balance your desires and, what the, eliciting a response from a viewer of your
Yeah,
work?
that's a really good question. And I think it does start with, I'm going to do a thing and I'm going to find out if others respond in a way that's generous, that shows interest. And I think this is where how artists, we're very vulnerable people because we are putting things out into the world. And even more so now with social media, where people can have these very visceral, immediate reactions and say really pointed things. I feel I started off thinking that my audience was anyone interested maybe in the painterly abstraction or the geometric abstraction I was making. And that person could be anyone. But it's interesting because more recently in my studio, I'm often thinking about my audience as other artists, as
Hmm.
peers, because I feel that when I go to a gallery or museum, I'm so invested as an artist. And there's a way, in the art ecosystem, there are artists, art patrons, museum people, arts writers. Um, then there's the general public. There's collectors. There are gallerists, and so there's a lot of different people, and it can be very tempting to want to try to play to the audience at times. I mean, it's a temptation. I don't know if it's a struggle necessarily for
Yeah.
artists, but it is definitely a temptation, especially when market enters the picture.
Yeah.
And so that can almost be a trap. So I feel that I've articulated for myself that when in my mind I'm working and wanting to be in public dialogue in a way with other artists, that feels so kind of safe for me and kind of rewarding as well.
That is very cool. You moved to Chicago when? In
2017.
okay, 2017. What brought you to Chicago?
So Nate got a position at UIC, and it
Hmm.
was kind of a great moment for us to leave. I feel that both of us had spent plenty of time in Minneapolis. We understood the city, we understood the art ecosystem there, and we were really ready for something new, something different. And it's
Yeah.
great that we had the opportunity to leave and head to Chicago, which is a bigger city, um, just a bigger network in many ways.
How are the art communities, within Minnesota or Minneapolis and Chicago different?
Chicago has a commercial gallery scene, and Minneapolis doesn't have as robust of one. There's a few galleries there that do participate in art fairs or have a decent roster that work can be
Hmm.
sold. But I think in terms of um, getting the kind of representation and support an artist needs, Chicago can offer much more in those terms. And there's also a major art fair here, Art Expo. Um, and so that also brings in a lot of people into the city. hence more people see your work, and those people are potentially museum curators or curators of interesting spaces around the US. You know, the ecosystem is just much bigger, so that
Yeah.
means there's more opportunities for artists, there's more platforms. There's a vast number of different platforms for an artist that maybe doesn't want to have to think about market, but wants to stay working with interesting spaces that give you freedom to kind of put on the kinds of shows you'd like. So
Yeah.
just offered a more robust picture of things we desired.
Do you think do you think those additional opportunities changed the trajectory of your career?
Yes, I do. I definitely do. When I first got to Chicago, I received this award in it's like maybe a couple years after I'd been here, or maybe three, Artadia, and that was an award that I feel gave me a kind of visibility that I did not have prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I lived in Minneapolis, I did get two awards that were national, but there was something different about spotlighting me um, on a Chicago platform so that the people and community here could learn about my practice. So that was super beneficial. I feel like that was a great kind of starting point to getting my practice known here in the city.
Are there artists in Chicago that you think more people or you wish more people knew about?
I would say there's a few people that come to mind. Naima Morgan is a good friend of mine, an incredible artist, an incredible thinker, super thoughtful. But some artists operate in quiet, and they can be not seen for a while, or seen in, they don't grab the same kind of attention as
Mm-hmm.
an artist that might be visually, quote unquote, louder, or, you know? And so I really love Naima's practice. She's a drawer. She also makes objects and does other things, but as her drawings are something that really are so attractive to me, because the study of drawing, it is a quiet activity and it's contemplative. And I think it's for deep thinkers. And so Naima Morgan's practice is what sticks out to me. So, a second artist that I'm thinking of that I really enjoy, that I had the pleasure of reconnecting with from my undergrad, is Norman Long. Norman Long and I were at Illinois State together. And I think we didn't reconnect until at least 10 or 15 years after that. And then more recently, we reached out and we did a studio visit. And Norman Long is an artist that he's a sound artist, so very interested in music, but also very interested in creating sounds and listening to sounds that happen in and through Chicago. And his practice is one where he renegotiates his own body's relationship to walking through certain parts of the city. And so he calls these sound walks, and he invites public participants to come along with him and kind of walk through different parts of the city and actively engage listening to kind of reorient one's own body in relationship to the city, which I think is really fascinating as an artist who's thinking about like how we typically move through the city. Like maybe we're going so fast, we're not aware of being easily excited by certain sounds that aren't so great. Maybe we're getting overstimulated, you know, and really changing our own relationship that we have to a place that we, you know, for good or bad, of how we can really have a relationship on our own terms. And so he is super interesting to me. And yeah, right now, he's one of my favorite Chicago artists.
Where can people find out about how to go on these walks? Because that's something that sounds really interesting
I
and
believe
fun.
Norman has a website, and we can put that in down below and put a
Yeah,
link in, and we can link to him. Yes, because often he does make public calls and announcements, and I have not yet gone on one, but I plan to.
very cool. Okay, so we're almost at the end of our time, and this is obviously this is a podcast about Chicago, but one of the things that I like to ask every guest is two questions, and I always wanted to, in my mind, there's some like one question will become the question as we go through this process. So I ask, but right now I'm asking two questions, I suppose. One, and you can choose which one you want to answer. You can answer both. One is, what do you love about Chicago? What is special? Like, what is really special and amazing to you about Chicago? Um, I'll start there. I'll start with that.
I thought about this. I feel that it is a question that comes up that I have had to sit with a while to figure out, is it a specific place? Is it a restaurant I like? Is it a location? I will say the greatest impact, the greatest impact I've gotten from a singular feature of Chicago has been the lake. And I'll explain why, because the lake, you mentioned the lake, and everyone has a different idea about what that might mean. The lake is so big and vast. You know, it does, for many people, even visitors that come, it does look like the ocean in some ways. But I think the lake has provided a kind of reprieve for me, being in a city that's as intense as Chicago can be. I mean, there's a lot going on. So in a day, just driving to run errands, you can be quite overstimulated just by the
Mm-hmm.
traffic or the visual noise on the streets, the advertisements, buildings, different things, the shifts from one neighborhood to another. But I find that when I go to the lake, I forget about that kind of hustle and bustle, which I also love the hustle and bustle, but there is something really tranquil. And, you know, I teach up at Northwestern, so there were times where I'll take specifically Lakeshore Drive because just laying eyes on the water does something pretty amazing to my body. And, you know, as you know, your mom taking the kids to the beach, it's great. My kids are finally at this age where um, they can kind of go into the water on their own and I can watch them.
Yeah.
And there is something great about just staring out at that water. I don't know. It's great. And I also took my first sailing lesson this summer. So that also, it's like there is an ongoing developing relationship I have to Lake Michigan. So it's good.
How is the sailing?
Oh my goodness. Ashley, it is so fun. It is so fun. I recommend it. It's a woman-owned place. It was super cool and super fun. And we can talk all about that off podcast because I'm going to convince us to go. It's a great activity actually for a group of friends to go do together because you're
Yeah.
learning a new skill and it feels empowering, but you're also out in the middle of Lake Michigan. And typically I'm on shore or I'm just in the,
Yes.
I'm just in the shallow end. I'm
Yes.
not out on the water often. So this was really, again, expanding the way that I think about that water.
Love that. Let's talk about it. I
Definitely.
yeah, I do totally relate though to the calming feeling of the lake. It feels like you're in a different, it almost feels like you're in a different city. You're certainly a different part of the city, but a different city from,
Mm-hmm.
if you live in an urban neighborhood like you do and like I do, the trains, I do think it's funny when people come, not funny, but interesting when people come visit. You are so, or people who live here are so attuned to those outdoor trains, like running all the time. And people who are visiting are like, the trains, they're so loud. They're going by all the time. And
Totally.
going out to the lake really does provide a reprieve. I love running out there. That lakefront path is just such a gift. I mean, such a
Yes.
gift to the city. It's so cool. Well, this was amazing. So
So
we will
fun.
end it here. Thank you so much for coming
Yes.
and doing this. This was super fun, and I do feel like I could have talked with you for hours about some of this stuff. So I love it. And
Well, thank you, Ashley. It was really fun to connect with you this way. I mean, we connect in other ways too, with our kids and all that, and it's great, but this was really fun to kind of connect professionally. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much. Thank you for listening to Notes from Chicago. This podcast is edited and produced by Tanisha Blakely. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Notes from Chicago on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.